Hello friends, welcome back to DigiTalk. So after a couple of weeks, I'm back with the part 2 of SOA. In part 1, I have covered the basic concepts of SOA, what exactly is SOA, how does it works, and why it is required, what are the benefits of SOA. Now, to extend same, in part 2, I am going to cover the SOA key components. Along with that, what exactly is Composite and the architecture of Composite. So when we talk about the SOA components, okay, so most of the time, many engineers get confused about the SOA component because when we talk about the SOA, it is a suite of lot of different technologies and product which is bundled all together. Along with that, you will have certain technologies which is related with the SOA but come with a separate installer. That means you have to install it separately and then you have to integrate it with the SOA. But when we talk about the key component, it belongs to the key component of SOA. Along with that, when we do a deployment in SOA, after developing the application, that is called a composite. And then what exactly is the architecture of composite? So whether you are a developer or you are an engineer who is working on support or an architecture, okay, this specific video is very important for you because in this video, I am going to explain about the core architecture of SOA composite and applications and along with that, key components. So let us begin with that, okay? So if you have missed my first video where I have explained the basic concept of SOA, so SOA, it is an orchestration engine, okay? Or you can say it is an orchestration platform, right? So what does it mean? It is used to integrate multiple applications, multiple technologies in the enterprise world. For example, if you have a source application which need to send a message to target, then in the between you have a SOA. You can send the message to SOA and then SOA can send message to target. Okay, so similarly, you can have a n number of sources and you have an n number of targets. So instead of one mapping between sources and target, which could be a complex activity, right? And the maintenance is also very tough in that case. If you are going for a one-to-one mapping between all the source, all the target, you have a single component in between, which is called SOA. So you have to integrate your source and target with only the SOA. So it makes this architecture as loosely coupled, right? You can plug in and plug out any of the source or target system anytime, right? Now, apart from that of integration, there are different capabilities of SOA, which we called as a capture, route, and transformation. That means, for example, if you have a SOA and then you have a source application and you have a target application, they need to be communicate with each other. Your source is developed in Java application, target is in .NET application. Similarly, we have a lot of technologies, languages across the world. And if those applications need to communicate with each other, then there has to be a certain kind of a transformations required so that they can understand each other, right? So in that case, SOA work perfectly because it does the transformation of the messages as well. For example, it is taking the messages from the Java and then it is making a certain kind of a transformation so that .NET application can also understand it. Okay, so this is called a transformation. So apart from an orchestration engine, your SOA is a routing and transformation engine as well. So you have a multiple sources, multiple targets. They are developed in different technologies, different languages there, and they have developed in different stack, right? But still they are able to communicate with each other with a single mediator engine, which is called a SOA, service-oriented architecture. Now come to SOA component. So when we talk about the SOA component, so there are certain components, those come along with the SOA installation. That means once you download the SOA and then you install the SOA, then some of the components by default installed with the SOA. But some, as I said, few more components are there. Those are also part of the SOA key component, but they come with a different installer and they are the independent products, right? So that means you can utilize those projects for your SOA, or if you don't need that, you don't use that one, you can only use the core component of SOA. Okay, the first one is the business rule. So what exactly is business rule? So I'm not going to explain you with the theoretical definition because that you will get everywhere on the internet, right? So business rule in simple language is that to give a dynamic capability to your programming language. For example, if I wanted to change certain sections of my code, okay, at the runtime dynamically, so I don't need to engage my developer every time. I don't need to go in a way that every time I'm doing the development of my application or the part that I would like to change, and then again I'm going for the deployment cycle. I'm doing it on testing, development, and I'm going to production, and then I'm going for a release for that one, even it is a small change, right? So to avoid that one, if you have an agile business where you have need a dynamic functionality, for example, if we are in a business where we offer a different kind of a random offers to our customers, and that is change day by day. You could have a different offers for the customers in the morning. You can have a different offers in the mid, and there could be a different offers in the night or in the evening, right? So that is a dynamic requirement. Okay, you have to club different kind of a product with different kind of offers, and then you can send it to the customized users, to individual users as based on the personalizations. And then there are a lot of such kind of a requirement where you need to change your programming with if and else and but cases at dynamically. So for that you have business rules. For that you define a business rules from the SOA architecture or from the SOA key components when you are developing the application, and then you can define such kind of a functionality which is called a business rule, so that you can change the code according to the requirements on fly. You don't need a programmer, you don't need to change the code, and you don't need to go for the deployment, right? The second is, and it is called as Oracle SOA Composer, okay, right? So when we install the SOA, then you will have a different kind of a URLs that you can access after the installation. So one of the URL that is called a SOA Composer URL, and that Composer URL is to create your business rules, and this business rule is installed with the SOA. Second is the human workflow. It is again explained with the name workflow. It is a workflow kind of a engine, right? Where, so for example, if we are doing an automation of some business process where uh, you may need some human to intervene in between. For example, you have a leave application system where when you apply for your leave, first it goes to your HR department, and then it look for your pending balance leaves, and then it forward to your HR department, from HR department to your manager. Once your manager approve, then it goes with a certain set of automated steps, and then it may go for the HR for the manual approval as well. That means you are defining a workflow where some of the process are getting executed with the help of automation, but some of the steps may need the human intervention, right? So for that, you have a human workflow. So once you will install the SOA, then you will get a URL for human work list, and this human work list URL is for the human workflow, and this human workflow is installed with the SOA suite. Third is the event framework. Okay, so that is E. Also clear from the name as well, event framework. That means it is generating certain kind of a events in certain kind of a condition. For example, if I'm doing a business where I have developed my orchestration with the help of SOA, okay, and I'm getting a different kind of a payloads, or I'm getting a different kind of a orders from the customers. Okay, if I want that, if a certain order that I'm getting from the customer, if it is the order total amount of my order is more than $1 billion, then should get an event. I should get an email, or I should get a certain kind of alert if the order is more than 1 billion, right? So this kind of a events you can design with the help of event framework. This is the part of SOA. Fourth is the OWSM, which is a very generic component, which is called a web service management and security, which is again installed with the SOA. And it is again clear from the name as well. It is used for the security of your web services. Because as I said, SOA is an integration platform where you can have a different kind of a technologies for the integration. One of them is web services. So if you are using the web service for the integration in your SOA, so for that security purpose, you can configure the Oracle Web Service Manager, right? And then you have business activity monitoring, which is also called as a BAM. Okay, so now this is specifically a reporting tool for all of your SOA transactions or the business flows, right? So as I said, SOA is an integration platform where you have a multiple source, multiple target. They are communicating with each other, right? And they have a certain kind of a SLAs. So to get the transaction get completed, right? So if you have a certain kind of a enterprise environment where multiple sources, multiple targets are communicating with each other, then you need a certain kind of a monitoring as well, which can track your all of the transactions that is happening between source and target, right? Within the different components. So for that tracking purpose, you have a dashboard application, or you can say reporting application, which is called a BAM in the SOA, and which is called a SOA BAM Composer. Okay, and it is installed with SOA Suite. Now again, it is a mediator. So mediator, it is again clear from the name, it is a mediator application. Okay, so it is between the mid of certain kind of a components. Okay, so if it is a mediator, that means it is transferring the some set of application messages from one side to another side, right? So this is called a mediator, which is you can also say as a routing engine, which is used for writing your data from one partner to another partner, which is again installed with the SOA. And another component, which is the heart of your SOA, which is called a BPEL, which is called a Business Process Execution Language, Process Manager. Okay, so this is also called a heart of your SOA. Why it is called a heart? Because if I'm saying that Your SOA is an orchestration engine which integrate your multiple sources and multiple targets, right? That means you need a certain kind of a platform which can integrate your source and target, right? So BPEL, Business Process Execution Language, is a framework in the SOA where we design the different kind of integration. For example, if my source application is sending the messages from the JMS and my target could be MQ or it could be database or it could be some other technology, right? So that means I have to integrate all technologies together so that they can route the message, they can have a transformation capabilities, and then they can send message to the destination. So such kind of a design of such kind of orchestration in SOA, we use the BPEL. So this is also called the heart of your SOA. Apart from that, you have a adapter. Okay, so adapter is in SOA. When I say that it has a integration with multiple technologies and multiple applications. So for each every technology, it has the adapters. So that means with technologies or your sources or your destinations, it talk with the help of adapters. For example, if my SOA is need to send message to some JMS, Java messaging system. In that case, it has a adapter called JMS adapter. If my SOA need to send data to certain database, right, to store some data in the database, for that I have a database adapter. If my application need to send to some MQ, or maybe my application is sending file to some file system, sending file to some other server file system, for that I have a FTP or SFTP adapters. Right. So this is called the adapter, which is used for the integration of the technologies in SOA. And this is again installed, a lot of adapters installed with the SOA, and then apart from that, you have a multiple adapters that you can install separately as well. Another is Oracle Enterprise Scheduler. It is very clear from the name as well. It is a kind of a scheduler where you can schedule the different kind of jobs, okay, and then you can have a different kind of alerts or events that you can configure with the help of the enterprise schedulers. And this is again installed with SOA, right? Then you have a Oracle Service Bus. So what exactly is Service Bus? It is again very clear from the name as well, Service Bus. If it is a bus, that means it is transforming the messages from one location to different location. So Mediator, as I said, in the initial, there is a component which is installed with the SOA, which is Mediator again do the same task, which Service Bus is doing, but there is a lot of difference between the different kind of features between the Mediator and the Service Bus. So Service Bus, when you install the Service Bus, you will get a Oracle Service Bus console for that one, and it has a separate installer. You can install this in the same Oracle home or in same SOA home where you have installed your SOA. Okay, but it is come with the separate installer. So if you wanted to use the SOA Service Bus capabilities with your SOA, then you can install this. Either you can install in same Oracle home, SOA home, or you can have a different Oracle home or for the Oracle Service Bus. Okay, and we will cover this SOA bus in some different lecture series, which will be specifically dedicated on the Oracle Service Bus. But when we talk about the SOA key components, then this service bus also come in picture. But make sure that you are aware about that one. It is part of SOA key component, but it has a separate installer. So that means it is not a mandatory component to use with the SOA. Similarly, you have a Oracle B2B, and which is a separate installer, and then you have a SOA for healthcare, which is again a separate installer. So B2B is a business to business communication. That means when you have a different trading partners and you wanted to exchange the some data or information or documents electronically with the trading partners. So for sharing the electronic data with the trading partners, there are the different standards across the world, so that the your documents can be accepted as an international standard between the trading partners, and it follow that standards. And if you have a trading partners where you need to exchange the data electronically, then you can use the B2B along with SOA. Okay, but again, it is a separate installer. Similarly, SOA for healthcare, it is a SOA specifically designed for the healthcare services, and it has a separate installer. So these are the core key components of your SOA. And apart from that, last three components, one is the Oracle Managed File Transfer. It is again clear for the name as well, Managed File Transfer. That means it is used for transferring the file from source to target locations, and it supports the FTP and SFTP servers. That means it is a product which is a separate, come with a separate installer. Okay, and it has an embedded FTP and SFTP servers which it utilizes for exchanging the files from source to target. Now, when we talk about the development of SOA components, as I said that when we develop the application in SOA, it is called a SOA composite, right? So developing the SOA composite, it is you have a separate software which is called Oracle J Developer. So this is specifically a developer tool. Okay. And business process monitoring, again, it is a separate tool which is used for the process management, which is out of scope of this lecture because this is a separate product altogether. But when you install the SOA, it asks you for the two options. You want to install only SOA or you want to install the BPM. So if you are installing the SOA, then it is a plain SOA with the component that I have explained. If you are selecting the BPM option during installation, that means you are installing the SOA as well as BPM, both. Right? So this is the clear definitions and explanations of the different kind of SOA components. Now, if we come to SOA composite application, now as I said that when we develop the application in SOA, it is called a composite. Now, what is the difference? Because if you are aware about the Weblogic, then we develop the different kind of applications in Weblogic and then we deploy it from the admin console, right? But when we talk about the SOA, it is a bit different, right? So that means we deploy application in SOA Suite in the form of composite applications, right? So what does it mean? If you are aware about the Weblogic, then we had Weblogic Server. We deploy the application in the form of var, jar, and er files, right? And then we deploy the application from the Weblogic admin console, which is a very basic task in the Weblogic. Now, when we talk about the SOA, so the application that we deploy in the SOA, it is called a SOA composite, or you can say it as a SOA archive or SAR file. This will always be a jar file. Okay, and then to deploy the SOA composite application, we use the Enterprise Manager Console, which is also called a Fusion Middleware Control Console. Okay, which comes with the Oracle Fusion Middleware Infrastructure Installer. And when we install the SOA along with the your Fusion Middleware Infrastructure Installer, then it comes with a separate component which is called Enterprise Manager, which is also called now Fusion Middleware Control. And accessing that console, we can deploy the SOA composite application. So now this is the difference between Weblogic and SOA. In Weblogic, we have a different archive file in the form of var, jar, er, which we deploy from the admin console. But when we talk about the SOA, then where we have a SOA composite, which we deploy from the Enterprise Manager console. Now, this is a very critical part of this lecture. And if you really wanted to understand the SOA and SOA composite application and architecture, I would recommend don't skip next 5 minutes. If you really wanted to understand the SOA composite and architecture from the depth. Now, SOA composite, as I said that we are developing the different kind of a SOA application. So now a SOA composite is an assembly of services, service component and references designed and deployed in a single application. Wiring between the service components and references enable messages communication. So when we develop the application, so if we are developing a composite, that means we are developing the different kind of a SOA system component. And what are the system SOA components? What we have discussed? We have discussed about the BPEL, which is the heart of your SOA. And then we discuss about the mediator. Then we discuss about the workflow. Then we discuss about the some more components. Okay. So like business rules. So that means what if we are developing a SOA application, that means we are developing these kind of components in my SOA application. Okay. Right. And apart from that components, what we are doing in SOA, we are getting some data from the source, doing certain kind of a transformation, and then this data going to my outer world, to my target, right? So that means I have a 3 major component: input, processing, and then output. So when we talk about the input, that my SOA is getting the data from the sources, for that I have a component in SOA that is called services. So services always refer to the outer world, that means to the source only, from where the SOA is getting the data. Service component is the processing engine where I could have a business rules, I could have a mediator, BPEL, and then other SOA components. And then when we talk about the data after processing, it is going to the outer world, to my targets. So for that, you will have a references. So that means you have 3 major components in SOA when we are designing the SOA composite application. One is the services, second is the service component, and third is the references. Services you will design to get the data from the sources. In between service component, you will design the different kind of a component. And then once you are after the processing, your data is going to the outer world. That means your targets, for that you will define the references. So these are the three major components in SOA. And then wiring between the services, service components, and references. So now they are all together different components. You have a services for getting the data from the outer world. You have a references to send the data to outer world. And then in between, you have a service component, which is doing a certain kind of a processing based on the logic that you have defined in SOA. Now all three components are related with linked with each other. Services sending the data to a service component. After execution, service components are sending data to references so that it can go to the outer world. So that means all three are connected. So all three are connected with the help of wires, right? And that you will see in detail once we'll go for a demo of the development of a SOA component application. But as of now, you can understand there would be a wire in between, which is connecting all three major components of your SOA component architecture, which is services, service component, and references. So it enables the message communication. So once they are connected, they all can able to communicate or talk with each other. So this is a complete small reference of my SOA component application. Here you can see that composite.xml, which is the major file of your composite.xml. If you are aware about the WebLogic, we always say config.xml is the heart of your WebLogic server because it contains all of the configurations. Similarly, when you are defining or developing a SOA composite application, for each SOA composite application, there would be a single configuration file, which is called a composite.xml file. Okay. And then what you have a service. Service is for the entry. That means to get the data from the outer world to your SOA composite application. And references is the exit. That means after processing, your data is going to the outer world. That means to your targets. And in between, you have a component. Business rules, mediators, BPEL, right? Workflows for your business processing. And then you have wires, which is connecting all the components. That means it is connecting entry to your components and then component to your exit. That means to service to component and service to references. These are getting connected with the above wires, and composite.xml is the main configuration file. So what we learn about here is three major components of SOA composite: services, service components, and references. Okay, so now let's take a bit detailed look of my service component. So service component are the building block of SOA component application, and each service component is hosted in own service engine container. So what we discussed the key components about the SOA, which is installed with SOA workflow, business rules, mediator, BPEL, right? So all these associated with a service engine. So if I'm saying a workflow, then you will have a workflow engine. If I'm saying BPEL, then you have a BPEL engine. If I'm saying business rule, then you have a business rule engine. Okay, and all these engines you can see from the EM console, Enterprise Manager console as well, where you can have a different kind of a settings for the each and every service engine. But what you understand here is that service component are the building block of SOA composite. So what are the service component? I have already discussed in detail in my previous slides. The service components are BPEL, and then I have business rules, I have a human task, then I have mediators. That means when I'm doing the development of my service component in SOA composite, what I am doing actually I am developing the application in BPEL, right? And then I'm creating the business rules. I may have a human task, I may have a mediators, and then in between I may have a different other kind of a integrations as well, like with the service bus, with the B2B or some other component as well. So now apart from that, what you have an entry point, which is called service, and then you have an exit point, which is called a reference. So in between the component, I was referring to BPEL, business process, human task, and mediators, right? So one point is covered, which is service component, which is in between. Now let's come to references. So as I said, references is enable message to be sent from SOA component application to external world, right? So references is the exit point from your SOA application or your from SOA composite. That means whenever the data is get processed from your SOA composite, it gets to the outer world, to the target with the help of references. Okay. And then in between you have a wire. So wire is also called binding component. Why binding? Because it is binding all of your service components. It is binding services with the component. It is binding component with the references. So this is also called a binding component. And wires enable you to graphically connect components in a single SOA component application for message communication. So when we develop the application in the JDeveloper for SOA, then you will get a drag and drop option. Like if you wanted to add a component, you will drag and drop the component option. If you wanted to add a service, you can just drag and drop the service component. If you want to add the references, you can drag and drop the references, and then all can be connected with the help of wires. And then the services. So services is the entry point. That means from service entry point, your data is getting inside your service composite, right? So now, in a nutshell, SOA component application consists of the following. Service component, which could be your Oracle mediator for routing, BPEL process for orchestration, human task for workflow approvals, decision service for working with business rule, BPMN, which is again, as I said, it is a part of Oracle BPM. Okay, and then there could be an integration with the Spring. Okay, integration for Spring is used for the integration with the Java interfaces in SOA component application. Right? So if you wanted to have some integration with the Java interfaces, then you can have a Spring. So all these are called the service component. And apart from that, you have binding components. And what are the binding components? You can refer it as a services and references along with the wires, which is the entry point and exit point in your SOA composite application. So these components are assembled into a single composite application. So whenever if we are talking about a SOA composite application, this is a combination of services, references, and service components, right? So now there are two type of binding components. So if you are getting confused with that one, what exactly is the binding component? This is nothing but it is services and references only. That means the entry point and the exit point in my SOA application. And now when we talk about the binding component, that means I can have the data which is coming from the different technologies. I can have the data which is going to different technologies. And for that, we have a different binding options. You could have a web services. That means your SOA is getting the data from different technology and services with the help of web services, or maybe it is getting the data from database with the help of database adapters. Maybe it is getting data from some JMS services with the help of JMS adapters. Similarly, it has a different kind of adapters. If you have getting the HTTP data in your composite application, for that you have a HTTP kind of a binding. If you are getting the data from the REST services, for that you have a REST binding. If your data may are also going to the REST binding. Similarly, as I said, you have a managed file transfer. And then apart from that, if you wanted to integrate your SOA with the cloud applications, where you have a different kind of a cloud applications running on with the leading providers as of today, which is ServiceNow, Salesforce, Sales Cloud Adapter right now, NetSuite, okay, ERPs. And then for that, if you wanted all those applications to be connected with the SOA, then you can use any of the cloud adapters. So these are the references as well as the services, both. So this is my SOA composite.xml file, which is the heart of your SOA composite, and which you can say as a main configuration file. And this is the diagram of a SOA composite application of the composite definition page. So once you will do the development in your SOA, or maybe once you will go to your designing page from the Enterprise Manager console after the deployment of your composite, you will see this kind of a diagram. Don't get confused with that one. It is very simple. If you are clear on what I have explained to you, what are services, what are references, and then what are the system components, then it is very clear from here. On the left hand side, you will have a service binding component, which we were saying as a services, which is the entry point for your SOA composite application, right? And in between, you have wire, which is connecting your services with the service system components, right? And these are called the system component or the SOA component, key components, which is the BPEL, mediator, and then business rule, Spring, human task, all this called the key component, which is in between. And then you have operations on the right hand side, which is called the reference binding, from where the data is going to the outer world. So the left hand side operations are your services to receive the data from the sources. On the right hand side operations is to send the data to the outer world, and in between you will have a system or SOA component for your composite application. So service binding components, service component, and reference binding components are wired, means connected for the communication. And once you will deploy your SOA component application, even if, for example, if you are not a developer, you are working in a support environment, and once you deploy your application from the Enterprise Manager, and after that you want to see what exactly are the services component, what are the reference component, and what are the business component or my SOA component defined in my composite, then for that you can go to your composite, click on your composite which is deployed, and then you will see this screen where you will see two sections. One is the component and second is the services and references. Inside component, you will have a SOA component. So for example, if you have a different kind of a BPEL component, you could have a mediator, you could have a business rule, you could have a human task, that you will see the definition inside the component type, what kind of a component exactly it is. Okay. And inside the services and references, you can see that from the data is coming to this particular composite and to which outer world or target this data is going after the transformation from the SOA. So here under the service and references, you can see the type. So type is showing web service, REST binding, JC adapters. Okay. And then if you see the uses, So uses, that means service and references. So wherever you have a service, that means it is called an entry point for your composite. Okay, and wherever you are seeing the references, this is a exit point from your SOA. That means from this particular component, my data is going to the outer world, and wherever I have the services or service, from there I am getting the data into my composite application. So this is all about the key component of my SOA application and the different components of SOA, and then the architecture of your SOA composite application. Okay, and the next lecture I am going to explain about the installation of SOA Suite along with the JDeveloper, how to develop SOA Composite using JDeveloper with a small example, then deployment of SOA Composite, and for that you have a certain components like SOA folders, default work managers, and many more that I'm going to cover in my next few lectures. So stay tuned till then, and thanks for watching this video.